Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. So this is an exponential curve, and I'm not trying to talk down to you. We're all at different levels. I just want to make sure everybody understands. This is a graph where you go from a very small number to a very large number very fast, relatively speaking. So that's what exponential means. And I'm saying that because for the first time in a while, I've added some words and phrases to my spreadsheet called timeline phrases, where if you're new to the channel, this is one way to study General Conference. What it is a tally of the number of General Conference talks that include these words and phrases. So I have a bunch of them over here that I've already covered on the channel. To the right, we've looked at a lot. And you can access this spreadsheet anytime. The link for it is in the description box below. You just have to go to the tab called Timeline Phrases. That's what we're looking at in this video. So I've added some new phrases and words. And we're going to start out with exponential and exponentially. So, for example, in 2024, the word exponentially showed up in one General Conference talk. And the same thing for 2022, and so on. Before we look at that, and I show you the other words and phrases that I searched this time, here's the update on the Flood the Earth Challenge. We're at 10,026 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared so far. We are now trying to get to 50,000. And I feel like that's actually reasonable. It's going to take time, but if we just keep at it, we will inevitably get to that point. So this is where we're at. We're just at the beginning of reaching this new goal, but we've reached the previous goal of 10,000, and we also hit the goal. Excuse me. We also hit the goal of 1,000 people that have participated in the challenge. Now we're trying to get to 5,000. So please try and make that happen. If you haven't joined already, just share a copy of the Book of Mormon, either a hard copy or the Book of Mormon app. And then let me know in the comments below or send me an email. Make sure to include #flood. That's what I search for when I update how many you've shared. And I keep track of it over here to the left. And I'll keep you updated every time you share a new copy of the Book of Mormon. Okay, so back to this. Okay, so exponentially and exponential. Let me zoom in. Let's go to 200. So as you can see, these words have been used relatively frequently since 2017. So that was the year before President Nelson became president of the church. And since he's become president of the church, it's been used quite a bit, as you can see, relative to the years before. When we go back in time, you have a couple times, 2004, 1999, and then nothing else after or before that. Okay. So something's going on here. There's a reason why you never really see this in General Conference so much until 2017. So I'm not going to read all the times that these words have been used, but it made me think of a couple things. So first, let's look at President Nelson's talk called Becoming Exemplary Latter-day Saints from the October 2018 General Conference. Okay, so he says, "My dear brothers and sisters, the assaults of the adversary are increasing exponentially in intensity and in variety." Okay, so the attacks of the adversary in recent years, or just recently, he's saying that it looks like this if you were to put it on a graph. And that would actually be really interesting if we could have some sort of graph or spreadsheet to show that the attacks of the adversary. But let's just believe him. He's the prophet. And so that's not good. That's kind of a problem for you and me and for the church. Okay. And then he says, "Our need to be in the temple on a regular basis has never been greater. I plead with you to take a prayerful look at how you spend your time, invest time in your future, and in that of your family. If you have reasonable access to a temple, I urge you to find a way to make an appointment regularly with the Lord, to be in his holy house, then keep that appointment with exactness and joy. I promise you that the Lord will bring the miracles he knows you need as you make sacrifices to serve and worship in his temples. Okay, and recently, you guys, we've been talking a lot about angels because in this last general conference, they were talking about angels, how we need to believe in angels. President Holland talked about it. President Nelson talked about it. I think it was Elder Anderson. He talked about angels and how we've been discussing the concept that angels really do follow you out of the temple and they protect you. Also, we need to pray. In a recent video, we talked about how it was President Holland. He was talking about the fact that prayer is one of our biggest shields, excuse me, shields against the adversary to help us with temptation and just casting Satan out of our lives. So we should really think about that if the attacks are increasing exponentially. Okay, so that's one example of the use of the word exponentially. And then I also thought about this. We've seen this a couple times recently on my channel, but let's do it again. This is a social media post, November 1st, 2018. Oh, so it's in that same year. President Nelson's first year as president of the church, 2018. Okay, he says, this is a global ministry. We are prophets for the whole world to all of God's children, not just members of the church. So on this tour, we talk to people in 5 different countries. If there are 200 or more countries in this world, 5 is such a small drop in the bucket. We'll get around, but we'll still miss more than we'll touch, but we'll try. We won't give up just because it's a big job. Yeah, just like the Flood the Earth Challenge. We'll get to 50,000. We'll get to 100,000 at some point. Okay. And then look at this. We're just at the exponential phase of growth. So again, and the growth of the church, I should have pulled this up. I'm not going to do it, but there is a graph out there. Just look it up on Wikipedia. And it does resemble an exponential curve. We have taken a hit over the last few years because of the pandemic, and I think we're still kind of recovering from that. But that's exciting, and that would explain why all these temples are being announced. I've done the exercise looking at the ratio of members to temples, and in order for that ratio to stay the same, or in other words, for things to continue as normal, it would require that the church increase by a lot. And the calculations that I did is that the church would have to increase somewhere between 32 million, or sorry, it would have to get to 32 to maybe 42,000 or 42 million to keep the same ratio. So things continue to operate as normal in the temples. I really think that that's what they're expecting. And he's saying it. He says, we're just at the exponential phase of growth, and it will continue. The Lord has said, I will hasten my work in its time, and he makes good on his promises. My dear friends, we are witnesses to the process of restoration. If you think the church is fully restored, you're just seeing the beginning. There's more to come. Wait until next year, and then the next year. Eat your vitamins, get your rest. It's going to be exciting. And it certainly has been. I've never seen so much change in the church, and I think it's just going to continue. I don't think it's over yet. I think it's going to continue until the second coming and beyond. The millennium is going to be a completely new phase. Okay, so that's what we have for exponential and exponentially. There's a couple examples, and this is what it looks like going back to 1942. It only goes back to 1942. I'm just explaining this for new people because I use this website called the Scripture Citation Index by BYU. There's a lot of things you can do. Here's the library. They have general conference talks going back to 1942. So that's my limiting factor. Hopefully someday they'll have more of the conference reports because those are available. So I hope that gets on here at some point. But you have Journal of Discourses, Scriptural Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, and you go to search. You can either search the scriptures or talks. And so I just click on General Conference and then search for, let's just say like love, search. And then it'll show you Every single time that that word has shown up in General Conference, going back to 1942, and it shows the date right here. And so I just count these up and then I put it on this spreadsheet. So let's go ahead and look at the next one. Actually, the next two. I am kind of surprised that I didn't already have these on here. And I'm sure that I'm going to add more, over time. Signs of the second coming and signs of the times. Okay, this one isn't quite as dramatic, and it was actually kind of opposite of what I thought I was going to see. You can see signs of the times. There's a spike in 2022. That's the year that President Nelson called on us to be the people of the second coming. When you go back in time for these, you actually see more of these two phrases, especially when it comes to signs of the times, especially back in the 70s and 60s and the 50s, not so much in the 40s. So what does that tell you? It tells me that they must have really felt like they were seeing many of the signs of the times back in the 50s, but especially the 60s and 70s. And then it kind of tapers off, which is kind of counterintuitive. And then you do see a little spike in 2022. So the way that I look at that is, there's for some, there's this kind of like idea that we haven't seen anything yet. Like we're still just like so far away from the second coming. And I don't think that this supports that. I think that we've been seeing the signs of the times. And they were really, talking about that in those decades from the 50s until the 70s. And what I've noticed with this spreadsheet, I'm not going to be able to like show it here. I'd have to like kind of like reconfigure it so you can see it easier. But with all these other words and phrases, especially the ones that are more like explicitly about the second coming, what I've noticed is that there's this trend where you'll have like a bunch during President Nelson's time. Let me just see if I can find maybe one example. Like second coming, you see this spike right here during President Nelson's time. Let me scroll over. And then you go back and it quiets down. But then in the 70s and the 60s, typically, you have another big spike. Those are the two big times for second coming talk. Usually it's centered on the 70s. It kind of bleeds sometimes into the early 80s, or into the 60s. And then you'll have a big spike during President Nelson's presidency. So this didn't really surprise me too much. Let's go back over here. This didn't really surprise me too much that we had all this signs of the times talk, mostly in the 70s and 60s. So I think that was kind of like a forewarning. They were talking about it a lot. It's like, you guys, that they are here. The signs of the times are here. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. The next one is never needed. So you see a cluster right here from 2022 until 2024. And of course, we may see more in 2024 because we still have the October General Conference to look forward to. You go back in time, you don't really see never needed, except, of course, in the 70s, and then one in 69, 59, and then 51. Okay, so you don't see it a whole lot. But again, there's this pattern of it shows up in the 70s, and then there's a spike in President Nelson's presidency. Okay, so I have an example where these two terms are used, signs of the times and never needed. We're going to be looking at President Nelson's April 2022 General Conference talk called The Power of Spiritual Momentum. I want to read this part first. May I underscore this call to action by discussing a concept I was reminded of recently while watching a basketball game. Okay, so here's one of his sports analogies. We're familiar with the one where he said during FSY 2022 that we're in the second half of the ninth inning. You can find that on my spreadsheets. It's an audio recording that someone sent me. I can send that to you if you'd like. I know there's a couple people that have requested it. I've just been dragging my feet. I'll get it to you. But here's another sports analogy. Okay, in that game, the first half was a seesaw battle, back and forth. Then, during the last 5 seconds of the first half, a guard on one team made a beautiful three-point shot. With only 1 second left, his teammate stole the inbound pass and made another basket at the buzzer. So that team went into the locker room 4 points ahead with a palpable surge of momentum. They were able to carry that momentum into the second half and win the game. So I feel like you could compare this to that last inning. You have like the first half, and now we're in the last half of the ninth inning in the baseball analogy. And I think that he's viewing this the same way. All right, later on he says, here's our phrase: we have never needed positive spiritual momentum more than we do now to counteract the speed with which evil and the darker signs of the times are intensifying. Okay? The darker signs of the times are intensifying. The darker ones. Positive spiritual momentum will keep us moving forward amid the fear and uncertainty created by pandemics, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and armed hostilities. Spiritual momentum can help us withstand the relentless, wicked attacks of the adversary and thwart his efforts to erode our personal spiritual foundation. So that's pretty intense. He says that the darker signs of the times are here in that they're intensifying. And then he gives some examples: pandemics, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and armed hostilities, just to name a few. They are here, you guys. We are seeing the signs of the times. And if you think that we haven't seen anything yet, I don't think that's true. I think we are seeing it. These are the darker signs of the times, according to President Nelson. Okay, next, let's see, we're almost to the end here. We have eyes to see. Now, this one is pretty stunning. This is not new, but I felt like it went along pretty well with these new ones that I've added. So we've already looked at this, eyes to see. And you see this solid block from 2017 until 2024. So almost exclusively in President Nelson's presidency, with the exception of 2017. And let's go back in time, and you don't see it as much. Not even really in the 70s. Well, kind of right here in the 60s. There's kind of a spike right here, but nothing compared to this block of time right here, 2017 to 2024. And already in 2024, we've already seen it 3 times. We still have one more general conference to go. Now, there's a really good talk. This is from the October 2021 General Conference, which was just 1 month after I started my channel, called Preparing for the Second Coming of Christ by Elder Christoffel Golden of the 70. And the phrase that he picks, well, I don't know if he picks it or who picks it, but the excerpt from his talk that is chosen is, more than ever before, we are required to confront the reality that we are getting ever closer to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Okay, I want to read this first part because, again, he's not just, talking about the Book of Mormon. He's trying to apply it to us today. There are people that, for whatever reason, they don't want to think about the second coming. They want to push it off into the future. They want to explain things away. And he addresses this. So at the very beginning of his talk, he says, as recorded in the Book of Mormon, 6 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, Samuel, a righteous Lamanite, prophesied to a Nephite people who by then had become mostly apostate, of the signs that would accompany our Savior's birth. Tragically, most Nephites rejected those signs because it was not reasonable that such a being as a Christ should come. You guys, one thing that we do on this channel is we watch for signs of the times, and a lot of times there's debate whether something is a sign or not. But I think most of us are on the same page. Maybe not like 100%, but if you're watching this channel, it's most likely that you do see the signs of the times, and you have eyes to see and ears to hear, whereas there's people that do not. And that could be for a number of reasons. But we don't want to be, we want to learn from this lesson and not be like the Nephites that rejected the signs of the times. All right, continuing. Regrettably, according to the scriptural record, many of the Jews, in like manner, could not accept that a man named Jesus from a little regarded province of Galilee was indeed the long-awaited Messiah. Jesus, who had indeed come to fulfill the many prophecies made by Hebrew prophets, was rejected and even crucified because, as the Book of Mormon prophet Jacob taught, the Jews were, quote-unquote, looking beyond the mark. Let me just stop there. It's because they were looking for something really spectacular, something that pleased the senses, something that was like really powerful in like a worldly way. Consequently, Jacob testified that God hath taken away his plainness from them and delivered unto them many things which they cannot understand, because they desired it. And because they desired it, God hath done it, that they may stumble. So it's like this idea of wanting to get really complicated and into the really, really deep stuff and just fixating on, again, the spectacular and the mysterious and stuff like that. Strange as it may seem, no teaching, no miracle, and no appearance even of a heavenly angel, as witnessed by Laman and Lemuel, appears to have the persuasive power to convince some individuals to alter their course, outlook, or belief that something is true. This is especially the case when teachings or miracles do not agree with an individual's preconceived whims, wishes, or ideas. Okay, later on, and here's our phrase, eyes to see, ears to hear. For those who have eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts to feel, more than ever before, we are required to confront the reality that we are getting ever closer to the second coming of Jesus Christ. True, great difficulties yet await those on the earth at his return, but in this regard, the faithful need not fear. This is something that the general authorities consistently counsel us on, that we don't have a need to be afraid if we're being faithful, if we're a covenant-keeping people, if we live righteously. Not that we'll escape everything, but we don't need to fear. And the Lord will, at large, protect his people. Okay, and then let's return to the spreadsheet. I just have this one last thing. It's unprecedented, and I'm surprised that I haven't had this on here until now. But this one's not as dramatic. You do see a spike in 2022. Okay, you go back in time, and you start to have kind of a solid block. Well, not really a solid block, but you have this like spike from 2007 until present. We haven't seen it yet for 2024. When you go back in time, it dies down. You do see it from time to time. There's kind of a spike in the 60s right here, but there just isn't a whole lot. So I guess things really start getting unprecedented starting in the 90s and then going all the way until today. So that's also something to think about. I have a quote that goes along with that. He doesn't use the word unprecedented, but let me just read what at the time Elder Jeffrey R. Holland of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles said in his book published 2022 called Our Day Star Rising, pages 48 to 49. So we're talking about unprecedented, okay? And everything that you are seeing, more active priesthood, more engaged Relief Society, more attention to the youth, more temples that are being built, more creations of units, more home-centered experience. As all of that unfolds, every bit of that is an attempt to make us true living disciples of Christ 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, at all times and in all things and in all places that we may be in. That is what is happening in this church. Okay, so like unprecedented levels of these different things. And we have been preparing for it for a long time. All the years that I have been a general authority, we have talked about these things. The timing is such that they are coming to pass now. I don't know what that means. I don't think it means the second coming is tomorrow. I don't think it is the day after tomorrow, but it could be. That's a really key phrase. It could be, because he's not saying, well, but we know it's not going to happen for at least 50 years or 100 years because there's still all these prophecies that have to unfold. No. An apostle who is now the acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, he says it could be. He's not putting any limitations on that. And if anything, he's saying these things that we've worked for so long, they're happening now. So, but it could be, and it is going to be some tomorrow. All right. Well, that's going to be it for this one. Again, you can visit my spreadsheet anytime. The link is in the description box of each video. They're best viewed if you're on a PC or a laptop. But you can go through here, and the ones that are most stunning to me are highlighted in yellow. That's why I have all these ones that are in yellow at the top. I mean, look at this one, coming days. You don't really see that at all before President Nelson's presidency. Coming days. One of the other ones that really blows me away is final phase. Final phase from 2020 until 2024, with the exception of 2023, and 2 times so far in 2024. You don't see that phrase at all when you go back in time. If that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.